She said, "I'm adopting my ex's last name professionally. It sounds more successful than yours." While we were engaged, I said, "Branding is important." Then I ended the engagement and started dating her cousin who'd always thought she was toxic. Original post. I, 33 male, am a licensed plumber. I own a small plumbing business, just me and 2 employees. We do residential work, mostly remodels, fixture installs, emergency calls. I pull in about $105,000 a year before taxes, which after running a business comes out to a take-home of around $72,000. It's good. Not rich, not struggling. I have a work van with my name and logo on it. That detail becomes relevant later. My last name is Plonka. Yeah, Plonka. Polish heritage. My grandfather came over in the 50s, worked in steel, raised a family, the whole immigrant story. I've never had strong feelings about my last name one way or the other. It's mine. It's on my business license, my van, my invoices. It's who I am. My ex-fiancée is a real estate agent. She's been licensed for about 4 years, and she's decent at it. Not a top producer, but she closes enough to make around $65,000 in a good year. We were together for 2 years, engaged for 5 months when everything blew up. Now, her ex-boyfriend, the one before me, has the last name Whitfield. I know this because she talked about him approximately 400% more than any person should talk about their ex. Not in a I miss him way, more in a reference point for everything way. When I was with him, we used to eat at this place. He always said I was great at hosting. That kind of thing. Annoying, but I chalked it up to a long relationship. They were together for 3 years, and tried not to let it get to me. For context on the breakup with him, he left her, moved to another state for work. It wasn't dramatic, it was just over. She took it hard though. Took her about a year before she started dating again, which is when she met me. So, the last name conversation. It was a Wednesday evening, about 5 months into the engagement. We were eating dinner. I'd made spaghetti, nothing fancy, and she was scrolling her phone. She'd been talking about rebranding her real estate presence. New headshots, new website, new business cards. Normal stuff for her industry. I was supportive. Said I'd help with the website costs if she needed. Then, super casually, like she was telling me she'd picked a new font, she said, "So, I've decided I'm going to use his last name professionally." I said, "Whose last name?" She said, "My ex's. Whitfield. It just sounds better for real estate. More professional. More polished." I put my fork down. "You want to use your ex-boyfriend's last name. For your business. It's not about him, babe. It's about the name. Whitfield sounds like money. It sounds trustworthy. Like old American real estate. No offense, but Plonka sounds like, I don't know. It doesn't have that ring. That ring. You know what I mean? In real estate, your name is your brand. And Whitfield just performs better than Plonka on a yard sign." I've thought about this a lot. I want to be clear about something. She wasn't wrong that last names carry associations in certain industries. That's a real thing. If she'd said, "I want to use my maiden name," or "I want to create a business name that isn't my personal name," I could have worked with that. We could have had a conversation. But she specifically chose her ex-boyfriend's last name. Not a random name. Not a brand name. The name of a specific man she dated before me. And she told me it sounded more successful than mine. While wearing my ring, at my dinner table, eating my spaghetti, I did the thing where I go very calm. I said, "Branding is important." "You're right." She looked relieved, like she'd expected a fight. She smiled and said, "I knew you'd understand," and went back to scrolling. I sat there for the rest of dinner doing math in my head. Not financial math, emotional math, adding up all the small things I'd filed away over 2 years. The X references, the time she introduced me at a work event and then spelled my last name for someone and said, "I know, it's a lot." The way she'd started signing her texts to clients with just her first name about 6 months ago, which I'd thought nothing of at the time. The fact that she'd never once suggested taking MY last name after marriage, which I hadn't pushed because it's her choice, but which now made a lot more sense. I did the dishes. She went to bed. I sat on the couch until about 1 a.m., thinking. The next morning, I told her the engagement was off. She dropped her coffee mug. Didn't break, but coffee went everywhere. She said, "What?" Like I'd announced I was moving to Mars. I repeated it. "The engagement is off. I'm done." She wanted to know why. I said, because you want to build your professional identity on another man's name, and you told me mine. Sounds like a joke. That's not something I can unhear. She said, and I remember this exactly because it was so unbelievable. You're ending a 2-year relationship over a branding decision? I said, you made a branding decision that told me exactly how you see me. Yeah, I'm done. She tried everything in the next hour. Crying. Bargaining. I'll use my maiden name instead. Anger. You're being insane. The classic, I didn't mean it like that. But here's the thing. She did mean it like that. She'd thought about it a lot, her words. This wasn't a slip. It was a strategy she developed and presented to me like a business proposal. She left that morning, took an overnight bag, went to her parents' house. I spent the weekend packing up her things methodically. Boxes labeled by room, nothing damaged, nothing missing. I'm not petty with property. I'm petty with my dignity, which is different. The ring. She'd left it on the nightstand, which I think was supposed to be dramatic. I returned it. Got about $7,200 back on an $8,500 ring. Resale on diamonds is brutal, but I expected that. Put the money back in savings. Now, let me tell you about her cousin. Update 1, 2 weeks later. Okay, so the cousin situation needs context, or it's going to sound insane. Her cousin is her mom's sister's daughter. They grew up close, same school district, family holidays together, the whole thing. But they haven't been close as adults. There's been tension for years, mostly because my ex has a pattern of treating her cousin like a supporting character in her own movie, taking credit for things at family events, making passive-aggressive comments about her cousin's job. She's a veterinary technician, makes about $40,000, and generally being the kind of person who needs to be the most important woman in every room. Her cousin has told multiple family members over the years that my ex is exhausting and toxic. This isn't a secret. It's a known family dynamic. Her cousin mostly manages it by keeping her distance and showing up to mandatory family events with a polite smile and an exit strategy. I knew her cousin casually through 2 years of family events. We'd talk maybe a dozen times, always friendly, always brief. She's quiet in groups, but funny one-on-one. Dry sense of humor. The kind of person who makes a devastating observation in a low voice that only you hear and you have to pretend you're not laughing. Here's how the connection happened, and I need you to understand the timeline because people are going to assume I was sneaking around. I was not. After the breakup, I went through about 3 weeks of just being alone. Working, coming home, existing. Normal post-breakup stuff. During that time, my ex's family was doing the expected thing. Her mom called me twice to talk sense into me. Her sister sent a text saying I was making a mistake. Her dad said nothing because her dad is smart. Then her cousin reached out. This was about 3.5 weeks after the breakup. She sent me a message on Instagram. Not flirty, not weird. She said, "Hey, I heard what happened. I just want you to know I get it." She did the same kind of thing to the last guy and the guy before that. You're not crazy. I wasn't going to respond at first, but the "you're not crazy" part got me. Because I've been sitting in my apartment for 3 weeks wondering if I was crazy for ending an engagement over a last name comment. Everyone in her family was treating me like I detonated a bomb over nothing. And here was someone from inside that family saying, "No, she does this, this is who she is." I wrote back, "Thank you. I needed to hear that." We talked. Not every day, not obsessively, just occasionally. She told me about the pattern she'd watched play out with my ex over the years. How my ex had told her previous boyfriend, before the Whitfield guy, that he needed to dress more expensively if he was going to accompany her to open houses. How she'd suggested a friend get a nose job before her wedding so the photos would look right. How she'd once told her cousin, to her face, that being a vet tech was sweet, but not exactly aspirational. I wasn't gathering ammunition. I was getting context. And the more context I got, the more I understood that the last name thing wasn't an isolated incident. It was the most visible symptom of something fundamental. My ex saw the people around her as accessories to her self-image. If you enhanced her brand, you were in. If you didn't, you needed to be adjusted or replaced. About 6 weeks post-breakup, I asked her cousin if she wanted to get coffee. She said yes. We got coffee. We talked for 3 hours. I asked her to dinner that same week. She said yes to that too. I want to be honest about something. I didn't start talking to her cousin to make my ex mad. I started talking to her cousin because her cousin was the only person in that entire family ecosystem who'd been honest with me. And when we got coffee, I realized I liked talking to her. Not as a rebound strategy. Not as revenge. I just liked her. But I also knew, I'm not naive, that the optics were thermonuclear. We kept it quiet for about 3 weeks. Not sneaking around, just not advertising. We went to dinner places where we wouldn't run into anyone. Texted a lot. Got to know each other outside of the family context. Then my ex found out. Not because we told her. Because we got unlucky. Her cousin's coworker saw us at a restaurant and mentioned it casually to someone who mentioned it to someone else. And within about 72 hours, the information had traveled through the network and landed in my ex's phone like a heat-seeking missile. Her reaction was a lot. She called her cousin first. According to her cousin, the conversation lasted about 4 minutes and included the phrases, "You backstabbing traitor," "He's MYX fiancé," and my personal favorite, "I was going to take you to that incentive trip next quarter, and now you can forget it." The incentive trip was for her real estate team's top closers. Her cousin is a vet tech. She was never going to an incentive trip. Then my ex called me. I actually picked up because I figured this conversation was inevitable and I'd rather get it over with. She opened with, "My cousin? Are you kidding me?" I said, "I didn't plan this. It happened." "What happened?" "Things don't just happen. You did this to punish me." "I didn't do this to punish you. I'm seeing someone I like spending time with. She happens to be your cousin. She's not even pretty. She works with animals. She drives a Kia. I drive a work van with Plonka plumbing on the side. You've already established that names and vehicles are important to you, so I'll let you do the math on which one of us she actually chose." Dead silence. I don't think I've ever said anything that landed that clean in my entire life. I stood in my kitchen afterward replaying it in my head like a game-winning shot. She hung up. Within the hour, her mom called me, her sister called me, and 3 of my ex's friends texted me from numbers I didn't have saved. The consensus. I was a manipulative narcissist who was using her cousin to humiliate her. I responded to exactly 0 of them. Update 2, 3 weeks later. Final update. I'll keep this one tight because honestly, I'm tired of this being a thing in my life and I want to move forward. The fallout after my ex found out about me and her cousin split into 2 tracks, the family track and the professional track. Both were messy. Only one of them was actually my problem. Family track first. Her cousin's mom, my ex's aunt, called an emergency family meeting. I'm not joking. She literally texted the family group chat, which her cousin showed me, and said, "We need to address what's happening before Thanksgiving becomes a bloodbath." Thanksgiving was about 7 weeks away at that point. The meeting happened at her grandparents' house without me or my ex present, just the parents, aunts, uncles, and the grandparents. Her cousin was asked to attend and explain herself. Her cousin went, and she told me later exactly what happened. The family was split. Her grandparents, old school, practical, said it was none of anyone's business who dates who after a breakup. Her aunt, her cousin's mom, was uncomfortable but ultimately said she's a grown woman. Her uncle, my ex's dad, the smart, quiet one, said nothing, which at this point was a signature move, and honestly I respected it every time. Her mom was the loudest, calling it a betrayal of family bonds and demanding that her cousin end it immediately out of respect. Her cousin said, "I've watched her treat every man she's dated like an accessory and every family member like a prop. I've been called unambitious to my face at Thanksgiving dinner." She tried to get her last boyfriend to cut off his best friend because he wasn't brand appropriate. She told her current ex that his family name wasn't good enough to put on a yard sign. I like this person. He treats me like a human being. I'm not ending it because it makes her uncomfortable. Her grandma apparently said, "Well, that settles that," and offered everyone pie. I love her grandma. The family meeting didn't fix anything, but it did something important. It forced the family to reckon with the fact that my ex's behavior had a pattern, and that pattern had been making people uncomfortable for years. Her cousin wasn't the first person to call it out, but she was the first person to call out in a room where everyone had to listen instead of changing the subject. My ex's response to the family meeting was to go scorched earth on her cousin specifically. Not on me, on her cousin. She uninvited her cousin from her birthday party, which was 3 weeks out. She removed her from the family group chat. She told her mutual friends that her cousin had been secretly pursuing me while we were still engaged, which was a complete lie. Her cousin and I didn't have a single non-group setting conversation until 3.5 weeks after the breakup. The lie about the timeline was the one that bothered me, because timing matters in these situations. If people believed her cousin had been circling while I was still engaged, the entire narrative shifted from two people connected after a breakup to cousin stole her man. So I did something I normally wouldn't do. I showed the receipts. Not publicly, not blasted to the world. But when specific people asked me about the timeline, I showed them the Instagram messages. First contact from her cousin, dated 3.5 weeks after the breakup. First coffee, 6 weeks after. First dinner, shortly after that. Clean, clear, no overlap. Every person I showed that had the same reaction. A nod and a, yeah, I figured she was exaggerating. Now the professional track. This one I actually didn't see coming. About 2 weeks after the cousin bomb dropped, I got a call from a general contractor I work with regularly. Good guy, sent me a lot of remodel jobs. He said, "Hey man, I got a weird call from a real estate agent today asking if I'd consider switching plumbers for the flips I manage." She said she had concerns about the professionalism of my current plumber. Your name came up. I just wanted to give you a heads up. My ex was calling contractors I worked with and trying to poach my professional relationships. In real estate, agents and contractors work together constantly. She knew my network because I talked about it openly during our relationship. She was using that knowledge to try to undermine my business. I took a breath. Then I took action. I called every contractor and property manager I had a working relationship with, about 14 people total. I didn't trash my ex. I didn't vent. I called each one individually and said some version of, "I recently ended a personal relationship with a real estate agent who may be reaching out to you about my business. I want you to know that my work speaks for itself, and I'd appreciate you judging me on our professional relationship, which is separate from my personal life." Every single one of them either already knew the situation, word travels in trades, or said something along the lines of, "Your work is solid, we're good." 3 of them told me she'd already called. One of them said she'd also sent an email. Then my general contractor buddy did something I didn't ask him to do. He mentioned to a few other agents at a broker meeting that a particular agent had been making unprofessional calls about a subcontractor's personal life. He didn't name her. He didn't need to. The real estate community isn't that big, and people connected the dots. Her broker called her in for a conversation. I know this because her cousin heard about it through the family grapevine. It wasn't a firing. She didn't violate any formal policy. But it was a "this is not appropriate professional conduct, and it needs to stop immediately" conversation. The kind that goes in an informal file. The kind that gets remembered when commission splits are being discussed. She stopped calling my contractors after that. Now here's where I land on everything. I'm still seeing her cousin. It's been about 2 months total. We're taking it slow because the context around how we started is unusual, and neither of us wants the relationship to be defined by drama. She's smart. She's kind to animals, literally. It's her job, and she laughs at my terrible puns, which is really all I've ever wanted in a partner. Is it awkward? Absolutely. Thanksgiving is going to be a thing. Christmas is going to be a thing. Every family event for the foreseeable future is going to involve some level of tension, and I've accepted that. Her cousin has accepted it too. We've talked about it openly and decided that other people's discomfort with our relationship is not our responsibility to manage. My ex is still using Whitfield professionally, by the way. I saw one of her yard signs last week while I was driving to a job. Big letters. Her first name, then Whitfield, then her brokerage info. She went through with it. She's building her professional brand on a man's name who left her 3 years ago rather than use her own name or, apparently, the name of the man she was engaged to. And honestly, that tells you everything. That 1-yard sign is the entire story in miniature. She would rather be associated with a man who left than with a man she considered beneath her brand. She'd rather be a borrowed Whitfield than an authentic version of herself. I drove past it, kept on my job, and pulled up in my van that says Plonka Plumbing on both sides and across the back. My name, my business, My grandfather's name that he brought from the old country and worked in steel mills to build a life with. My take-home is $72,000. My business is growing. My van needs new tires and my logo could probably use an update. But it's mine, every letter of it. Her cousin and I are going to her grandparents' place for Thanksgiving. My ex will either be there or she won't. Either way, I'm bringing pie because her grandma likes pie and her grandma called. That settles that during the family meeting, which makes her grandma the real MVP of this entire situation. That's it. That's the story. A last name, a yard sign, a cousin, and a plumbing van.